So, how I got into psychology when I was 11 years old, I picked up a book, a psychology book, a textbook, and I was trying to read through it to figure out how can I help my parents through this divorce? Because there was a lot of custody battles and it was pretty hard. So I thought, okay, let me read through the psychology textbook and see if there's any way I can kind of help solve the problem for them. And maybe I can bring them together and all will be good, right? Think about it. I'm an 11-year-old.
Welcome back to the Describe Your World podcast. This is episode 11, and today I'm here with my guest, Kayshia. How's it going, Kayshia?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're going to get into a lot of different topics. Also wanted to start off by shouting out Kayshia's podcast, which just launched, called Paradigm Shifts. So that could be a nice starting point if you want to tell us just a little bit about it and maybe what inspired you to start podcasting. That would be really cool.
Oh, goodness. We'll jump right in. Yeah. So Paradigm Shifts podcast is kind of born out of the space that I contribute on an everyday basis. My field that I study and work in is organization development or organizational psychology. And the reason I got into this work was because I wanted to really focus on the space where we spend the majority of our lifetime, right? We spend 70% of our lifetime at work, and I enjoy contributing to that space. And I love to learn about science and all the tools that we can bring to life in the workplace to help improve that environment. But I don't know if industrial organizational psychologists really get the light that they need, the sun and the shine of how they help improve organizations, how they help leaders. So I started this podcast from that point of view, that perspective, to be able to share IO psychologists and org psychologists' perspectives, tools, insights for other organizations and leaders to kind of grasp onto. And hopefully it just continues to spread. And I just love being able to learn. So I'm learning so much.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. And I'm excited as a listener, and I'm excited to learn and grow as well. So just for those listening / watching on YouTube, we would love it if you would go and hit the subscribe button and like on the videos, engage with the videos. Please leave a comment. I'm going to have a button floating around somewhere if you're watching on YouTube so that you can click on a link and it'll take you right over to Kayshia's channel. And that'll be super nice for you guys to go show your love and support over there too. So with that, now that we've kind of gotten the administrative stuff out of the way, I want to kind of go into who you are as a person so you can actually describe your world, which is kind of the point of our podcast here. So I'm excited to learn about you and kind of what early life was like and whatever experiences you like to share.
Yeah, where do I start? So I am from a small town called Susquehanna in Pennsylvania. It's very northeast Pennsylvania. And no, Amish people don't live there, but we are close to Lancaster. So I usually get it. Did you grow up with Amish people? No. But I grew up in a very, very small town. I think I graduated with like 70 people in my high school. It was a very small graduation class. And as soon as I could, I got out of that town. I got out of that small town and I went to pursue psychology in East Stroudsburg University of Pennsylvania. And then shortly after, I moved to Queens. Now, I grew up in a family of, I have two younger sisters and a half brother. My parents got divorced when I was about 7 or 8. We moved around a lot as well when I was growing up because my dad was in the military. What else? Let's see. I did competition cheer when I was younger.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to my career stuff, so how I got into psychology when I was 11 years old, I picked up a book, a psychology book, a textbook, and I was trying to read through it to figure out how can I help my parents through this divorce? Because there was a lot of custody battles and it was pretty hard. So I thought, okay, let me read through the psychology textbook and see if there's any way I can kind of help solve the problem for them. And maybe I can bring them together and all will be good, right? Think about it. I'm an 11-year-old. But I fell in love with the science of human behavior. And just from there on was like, I'm going into the world of psychology. I just knew it from there. Yeah.
So it was born out of a place of turmoil and crisis, for an 11-year-old, I guess. But then it just became like a passion.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a young age, I've always been, my mindset's always been kind of around trying to solve problems. taking things apart, breaking them down, trying to really understand them. So it was a natural fit for me to pursue psychology. When I was in high school, I took an elective course in psychology, and that kind of solidified it for me. I had like a great professor, high school teacher, actually, because they're not professors in high school. And he just like really made it really from there where I started to go is like, oh, I want to go now into helping people solve psychological disorders. So like schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder. It's like, oh, I'm going to solve that. And then I got into college and I was like, I took an abnormal psych class and I was like, oof, I don't know how to compartmentalize working every day with individuals with these types of psychological deficiencies and then not take that home. Right. And so I started thinking about the practicality of that type of career. And then that's where I ended up pivoting into industrial organizational psychology as a field. But ultimately just really didn't love the focus clinical psychology had on mental illness. And I really wanted to focus more on like the positive side of health, which was like moving people up from the average. Sean Aker, if you've ever heard of him, he writes a book, The Positive Advantage. He talks about moving, instead of psychology, typically traditionally focuses on moving people from the bottom up to the average, and positive psychology is about moving people from the average up. And so that's kind of where I wanted to spend a lot of my time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Psychology's always been something that's really fascinating to me. I actually feel like I made a huge mistake by pursuing the English side of things and not the psych side of things. I did take a general psych class, and I think I might have taken one more upper psych, but definitely a missed opportunity because it's really fascinating. I definitely would have turned more toward like the downward, like the people who are sort of trending downward and need help to be picked up. But just because I find that so fascinating, schizophrenia and DID and everything else, it's tough though. So I definitely see how you would want to trend or lean more toward, lifting people above the average.
Yeah. And some people, they can do it, right? They can compartmentalize. I just think with some reflection and just doing some deep self-awareness work at that age, I just realized, and also some support and feedback loops from other individuals in my life at that time, I realized like probably wouldn't be the best fit for me because I really do kind of absorb emotional like type of in emotional type of work. I can really absorb it and just kind of like hold on to it. So for me, it's like really important to be in a place where I can compartmentalize or do it in a way that's not going to impact other areas.
Right. So I'm curious, so you're originally from Pennsylvania, and then you said you spent time in New York.
No, I actually didn't say that, but you probably from our conversations before, you've picked up on that. So I actually moved to Charlotte after I graduated from my undergrad to pursue my master's. And then about a year to two into Charlotte, I moved up to New York for about 2 years. I was helping a family start a business up there, and I did some OD work for a small business. Very short-lived experience. I always thought I wanted to live in the city and be a city girl until I lived there. And I was like, maybe not this city, mostly because of the weather. But then found myself moving back to Charlotte, finish up my master's. And then I've been here for 10 years now. So I've been kind of in Charlotte. Charlotte's home.
You've been grandfathered in. You're a Charlatan.
Exactly.
That's so funny. Around here in this area, most people that you see are not from the Carolinas. It's kind of funny that more often than not, you meet someone and they're not from Charlotte. The actual Carolinians that are here are few and far between, at least in my experience. I think where I am now, being a little bit farther out of the city, it's more often that people are from the area. But Charlotte itself is just a huge melting pot.
It really is. I think it's a nice medium. I can see myself, though, still moving somewhere warmer. Maybe not south, maybe out west. I don't know. But I was promised really warm winters here, and that so far has not lived up to my expectations. What I mean by warm is like not 40. I mean like 70. So when I first moved here, my aunt was like, she introduced me to the area, and she lived here before I came here. And so she said, yeah, we have warm, mild winters. You're going to love it. And anything then is improved from Pennsylvania, right? Because it's so cold up there.
Right.
But I got here and I'm like, it's still frost. Like I still have to wear a winter jacket. So it's a little too cold.
Yeah, my wife is from Michigan, and she ran from Michigan because of, I mean, for a lot of reasons, but primarily because of the weather, because it was too cold. And a couple of things that were surprising. Number one, it was surprising to me that you have to have snow tires in some places, apparently, and you have to change your tires because of the weather. I was kind of baffled by that. And then number two, whenever it's like, 45 degrees here, I don't consider that cold at all. That's great for me. I'm out in a t-shirt and shorts. And then she's like, no, it's still way too cold. So sounds very similar.
Very similar. Yeah. I think, yeah, you're just one or two ways.
Yeah. And it's, it's very, like, I call it the bipolar Carolinas, because, you might have snow one day and then you have like 75-degree weather the next day. I still would not for anything go up to like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and experience all of that like harsh coldness.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, it could probably snow. We'd have 2-3 feet of snow, and we'd still have school. Things would still be open. Here, it's like 2 inches and everything's closed, so it's a big difference. Also, I will give some leniency to the fact that we don't have the equipment down here, right, for that type of weather.
Yeah, here is like if it rains a little bit, if it rains kind of hard or it's a little windy, then all the bread and milk are gone.
I've noticed that. Thank goodness I don't eat a lot of bread and drink a lot of milk, I guess. So French toast, I guess, is what everyone's making.
Yeah. And then toilet paper too. It just goes really fast. All of your essentials are gone.
Oh, I think that's everywhere.
So I'm very curious about early life. So you have a couple siblings. Tell me what it was like growing up, like as a kid. What was school like? What was your family like? Kind of like your routine week, things you would do.
Yeah. Well, I would say that my childhood was kind of a little bit more of a darker experience in a darker stage of my life. Growing up, obviously, talked about my parents getting divorced in an early age. I was the oldest sibling. And so when my parents, we didn't come from a lot. So we grew up with very little. And so my parents were both working. And as the older sibling, it was my role to step up and take care of, provide support for my sisters and be a good role model. I felt the pressure of that quite a bit. I was making dinner at like 12 years old for my sisters. I was cleaning and taking care of the house. And sometimes my parents worked 2 jobs, so we wouldn't see them the whole night. And we'd see them maybe the next morning before they went to work again and did it all over. But it was also really difficult, I think, during the custody, because the custody battle, just kind of determining when courts have to decide where you live, or they ask you as the oldest sibling, hey, where do you think you should live? It's kind of like answering the question, which parent do you love more? And I just think that was such a difficult question to pose to a young child. I mean, you think about the events that shape your life and how you become who you are in the future. And I think things like that, adults don't realize have such an impact on the future of of someone's life. And it really does have a huge impact.
Do you think that that role of kind of being the mother figure and taking care of your siblings is a part of how driven you are now and why you want to be successful in so many avenues?
It's a good question. So it's interesting because my dad from a very young age had always drilled into me, all right, Kayshia, you have 2 choices when you graduate from high school. You can either go to college or you can go to the military. There's nothing else you can do outside. And so I was just so fascinated because he went and studied he got his associates in computer science. So I'd get to take trips to the campus library with him, and we'd have lunch, and I'd be flipping through books while he's flipping through books and studying computer science. I would be flipping through my own books, and I thought that was so cool. And so I was like, oh, it's definitely college. I'm not going to the military. It was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, you get to come and read all day. And at that time, I think I was like, I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd. So at that time I was getting lost and escaping into that world. Right. So it's like, okay, college all day. That's what it's going to be like. But my dad, he's a military dad. So he was really hard on me. I think that contributed a lot. But when I look at the dynamics of my parents, my mom was really flexible, laid back. She was like, oh, as long as you're doing the best you can, like, that's all that matters. Like, I still love you the same. My dad, like, I'd come home with like an A- and he'd be like, okay, that's great. But like, there was an A+, you could have got worse. So it's interesting when I think about what dynamics contributed to the nature of me being driven. I don't know. I think obviously both of those perspectives kind of played a part, but I also think I had to grow up really, really fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was kind of thinking along those lines. It's, I think drive. When I think of drive, I think of environment, and then I think of self-awareness. And so I know the environment plays a role because I also come from a really small place without very many resources available. I didn't have siblings to take care of, but we still didn't have much. So part of my drive is, trying to get out of that circumstance and create a better circumstance. Then I also think there's some inherent quality too, where there are just certain people who want to keep pushing and they aren't satisfied by wherever they land. They just push. So I think it could be both. But I'm sure you're far more aware of, your own circumstance. So I don't know that the military dad thing is a bad thing. I think that's just, that part of you that's like, okay, I have to get the A+ and not the A-.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, so it could drive a little bit of like perfectionism. I wouldn't say I've ever been like, oh, everything needs to be perfect, but I have a drive to be better than I've ever been, right? Like, to be better than I was the day before or yesterday, or I just have always from a young age felt like I could do better. I could do better. I can contribute more. I can help people, help the world, make it an impact, and just felt like I could be making a bigger impact in some way. And that, I don't know, I've always had this sense of like, whatever I'm doing needs to be bigger than myself. It needs to help more than just me.
Right. I heard two things, and one of them is extremely selfishly not important at all, and the other one is probably more significant, but we'll hit the not important one first. So Harry Potter house.
Well, I thought growing up that I was in Gryffindor until just recently, as part of a tradition that I have to rewatch the Harry Potter as a marathon around the holidays. I decided to take a sorting hat assessment. Now, I don't know if this assessment tool, this instrument was very psychometrically sound. I would argue and debate that. But I ended up in Ravenclaw and read the description. I was like, okay, fair, but still I want to be in Gryffindor. So like my child was like, my inner child was like, you're in Gryffindor, relax. You should have told the sorting hat. But there was a question that asked you, like, which house do you want to be a part of? And I said Gryffindor. It still didn't put me in there. So I don't know. Still questioning the validity of this instrument. Did you
do like the official website, the Pottermore test?
No, I didn't. Is that what I should have done? Okay.
That's what you need to do. If you really want to be a Gryffindor, at least you got to give it a fair shot and do like the official test, because that way the actual sorting hat himself will come to you and tell you where you should be.
Oh, okay, good. Because that does give me some relief, some light at the end of the tunnel, because I was a little nervous, couldn't sleep last night. I was like, man, Ravenclaw, really? I thought it was Gryffindor. Yeah. I'm going to give it a shot.
They're pretty hard to come by. We have a friend, we have a couple who are our friends and / family, and the wife, she's Ravenclaw, but it's pretty hard to find, lifelong learners who are driven by learning itself. Like it's a super interesting quality. Whereas I feel like Gryffindor and Hufflepuff have more of those general qualities that are just found in a lot of people. And then your Slytherins are extremely specific as well. So I feel like if you don't really have a niche, then they throw you in one or the other too. And it really just depends on the journeyman inside of you and the bravery versus like your selflessness, I guess.
Ooh, now you make me feel better about being in Ravenclaw. So maybe I might stay because I can classify myself as a lifelong learner for sure.
Yeah. Knowledge and learning, I guess, are the trademark qualities if you're Ravenclaw. But it is, if I got that as a result, I wouldn't be mad just because it's such a rare, result to get.
Oh, well, thank you. Feel good about that now. You just solved all of my problems.
So don't go take the Pottermore test.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll wait on that. And then
so
you said there was another point, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I haven't talked about on the podcast in a while, which I always try to hit because it is a big thing for me, is purpose. And so I think that I'm intrigued by you because it seems like purpose is sort of structured and built on a lot of different things. So there's the environmental part of your upbringing and, the drive to be successful and to help other people. But then there's also the lifelong learner, and there's the part of you who wants to, push yourself to higher places. So kind of curious, what do you consider to be your purpose and how did you come to understand it?
Answering what your purpose is not it's a simple but not an easy question, right? Because internally, intrinsically what your purpose is, but I think always putting it into words is like where it gets a little more difficult. I would say characteristically, my purpose is to help people. My purpose is to lift people up, to support them, to solve problems, to figure out a way other than being stuck, right? When I think about helping people, I think getting them unstuck, removing barriers, and whatever that looks like. Where I've gravitated towards is doing that in the workplace. And that's, again, going back to, we spend so much of our lifetime there. When I really think about psychological and mental illness, and I think about the impact that has in our lives and on us as individuals, but also our families and future generations, and how that plays a role in society and community and just larger context, right? Leaders of organizations have such a huge opportunity to make a positive impact on individuals and influence so much more than just bottom line, right? So much more than just productivity, so much more than just churning widgets. I mean, yes, and we could do that. And we can also, if you're a really conscious leader, we can make a huge difference in people's lives and the world, in my opinion, and what I believe, because we spend so much of our time at the workplace. And I just don't think that concept is really thought about enough, right? When you think about maybe a difficult situation in the workplace and how that impacts an individual when they come home and they bring it to their family, even if they are compartmentalizing, right? Even if they are deciding, okay, this is home, this isn't work. One affects the other largely, and vice versa. How many times have you gone to work and your mood was different? Your ability to be productive was different because you had something hanging in the back of your head, in the back of your mind at work. Give you a good example. Last year, I lost my dad, right? So he passed away last April. How difficult was it for me to go into work and actually feel like I want to be at work? Very difficult. And I would say that with anyone who is going through grief, right? Or anyone who's having a challenge in the home place. So it impacts going from home to work, impacts just as much going from work to home. When you think about, okay, maybe I have a stressful situation. Someone who's up for a promotion and they didn't get it, right? They come home, they fight with their wife, they fight with their spouse. Maybe they yell at their kids. Like that impacts that just so much, right? Like now the child, maybe their needs are neglected. And I mean, we can project and project and project and predict and predict and predict all of the different influences, but there's so many reasons why we should optimize the workplace to make it an environment where positively impacts individuals instead of negatively impacts them.
So it sounds like it's kind of you're trying to help people perform optimally, but also sort of balance and deal with their outside of work experiences so that it allows them to do the best job possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually did a study on this. We measured for my thesis or my capstone in my master's, I did a research study on this where we looked at psychological capital, which is a construct that can be measured in an organization. So, similar, human capital, social capital, psychological capital can be measured. And I studied the if we apply a positive intervention in the workplace, how does that impact psychological capital in the workplace? But also, if you're measuring it at home, how does that impact at home? If I'm only applying the positive psychological intervention in the workplace, not at home, is there a carryover effect? And there was a significant carryover effect. And that was really cool to see that if we focus on psychological capital in the workplace, things like hope, optimism, resilience, self-efficacy, positive relationship building, those kind of things, if we focus on bringing those up, it positively impacts your psychological capital in the home place and your personal life, which makes a difference on the relationships that you have at home with the individuals that you go, work, have life with. So it makes a big difference.
I think too, something like that, even on a smaller scale, I think you see it with kids in grade school too, because my mom has been a teacher for 25, 30 years and largely in private school. So a lot more of an intimate relationship with the kids where, you have smaller groups of kids per teacher, but those experiences at home are pretty impactful, and they can affect a lot of things when it comes to test taking, when it comes to behavior, when it comes to just the relationships with other people and sort of isolating themselves and relationship with their people of authority, So I think it's not super different. I think it's very similar, but different. The age is different and the circumstance is different, but it seems like a similar correlation.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'm hearing a lot about you helping other people. I want to know what you want. So what, as a Ravenclaw, as a lifelong learner,
as a new Ravenclaw,
yes, as a newly discovered, a newly grandfathered Ravenclaw, what would you say would bring you ultimate satisfaction?
Oh, like on a personal level or a professional level?
Yeah, just for you. No, not in the workplace, not helping build anybody else up. What would make you super happy?
Oh, I have so many things. I have so many things, like positive relationships in my life. I just want to capitalize and continue building those friendships. I train in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, so I'm actually competing in April for the first time. So I want that to go well. What else? I do weight training as well. So I'm very active and into fitness. So just health. I think health, and you can't ask for anything else than better and better health, right? Because that's like the one thing besides time that you can really yeah. So health, probably positive health, positive relationships would be the two key focuses outside of work for me. But professionally, I want to continue building my brand in this field and in this discipline. I want to continue helping leaders and organizations help their people and build better strategies around their people. And maybe one day write a book. That would be fun.
Yeah, I think that's definitely on my sort of to-do list before I'm too old to feel accomplished by doing it. I definitely would love to. I mean, I have published before, but I would love to write a full-length piece and have it out there and have it available for people to read. When I started with the podcasting, I even said my one goal was to just have one person be influenced in a positive way by it and nothing else, no other goals, just the one goal. But writing a book would be something that would really feel satisfying. For whatever reason, I don't know. It feels like, you get to really document your thoughts and your experiences and have it sort of validated by being published and available to people.
I agree. I used to write so much when I was younger, and that was another form of escapism when I was little. I would write poems, I'd write songs. I actually was in a band, such like a past life thing. funny story, we used to like record music. We would actually tour like small like shows up and down the Northeast coast. It was started out as like an acoustic, just me and another person. And then we actually had like a bass player, then we had an electric guitar player, then we had a drum player, and then we were like actually booking shows. It was really cool, nothing humongous, but we had merch and it was like an exciting time. And I was reflecting on that actually, that experience this past weekend, and just thinking about like the satisfaction I got out of just like pouring out my thoughts and expressing my thoughts on paper. And it's just such a cool thing. I mean, journaling definitely helps. But when you pair it with music, I think it's a really cool experience.
That's kind of a good segue, because I want to get into like hobbies and interests and things like that. So I'm curious about how your hobbies and interests have changed, maybe since from childhood. I mean, obviously you were doing a lot of work and stuff, but there may have been things that you were really into up until now, and maybe what things have kind of stayed the same, things you still really enjoy.
Well, writing has shifted. So instead of it being more like spoken word and poetry and songs, it's really now more journals. I've recently been experimenting with future journaling. Have you ever heard of that?
I've definitely heard of it. I have not tried it.
It's such a cool, I think it's overlooked, underplayed, whatever the expression is. It's like you sit down and you imagine the future, ideal future state that you want to be in, environment, life, whatever. And you write it as if it's happening right now. So it's like, I'll just go into like an example. I am currently sitting in a chair in my master bedroom, looking out the balcony of our new home, overlooking the ocean. It's on the West Coast. It's such a beautiful day, blah, 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 right? So you're mad, like you are there in that moment. And it's really cool. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it in quantum physics, about like how you can transcend, reality and time space continuum and things like that. I don't want to like totally nerd out on you, but it's just a cool activity. So that's one thing. And then jiu-jitsu is new for me. I've only been in it for 2.5 years. But I wanted to get into it for self-defense. My dad, again, being in the military, is always like, you have to have a concealed carry. And I got that and I did that. But I was like, I really don't want to have to use that, right? If something was to happen, I'd rather have a different way to resolve the situation. And so I looked into like, what are the most effective self-defense martial art forms? And jiu-jitsu came up. I said it was like great for those who are more, smaller individuals against bigger individuals. I tried it for a week. I was like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. It's so weird. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Then I started to like watch videos on it, and I was like, oh, it's like strategy. It's like you're using your brain. It's like chess. You have to be a step ahead of someone else. And then I went back, did it some more. Then I became obsessed with it. And now it's a lifestyle. And I will like, it's a community. Like once you're in, you're in. Like a speakeasy secret like thing. Not that it's secret. The secret's out, right? Everyone knows jiu-jitsu. Well, most people know jiu-jitsu, but once you're in, it feels like you're part of this like exclusive thing.
What is your competition coming up? Tell us a little bit about, what you have to do. Do you have to like fight someone or do a certain move?
So in jiu-jitsu, when you are competing, or we call it sparring, right? So you are just kind of like, or you can call it rolling. You're just going to compete against an individual for submissions, points, things like that. The competition, I don't know exactly what day I'm going to be doing it or anything like that, but I just know that there's one in April I'm going to submit for. But yeah, you just basically you go against similar belts. So we have different ranks within jiu-jitsu, and also within like a weight class. So depending on what your weight class is, and you go up against an individual, and there's brackets and things like that. And you get like a medal, or I'm not in for that. But I am just going to kind of see what it's like to experience a real life competition, a real life spar. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that when you are in a situation where you're being attacked, right? Or you're potentially going to be attacked. You don't know how you're going to react unless you're in that situation. Unless you're desensitizing yourself to that, you're never going to know, right? So if someone was to jump you or attack you, you wouldn't know if you go into fight, flight, or freeze. And if you are putting yourself in training scenarios or simulations, you're more likely to understand how you're going to react. You're more likely going to be able to slow your reaction down and be able to respond in a proactive way, hopefully in a more safe way. And so that is like part of the reason why I'm in jiu-jitsu, because I just want to be able to smartly get out of unsafe situations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's extremely valuable for discipline, for, physical health, and also just being in a place like Charlotte. And I hate to say anything negative because I know there are a lot of positive things about Charlotte, but there are some really tough areas in other big cities as well. There are places where having some self-defense experience and knowledge would be super valuable. I know there was a time when I was visiting, at the time she was my girlfriend, now my wife, but she was at an apartment in Charlotte. And if I was leaving late from the apartment, it was sort of a walk to get from, because they didn't allow you to park in their parking area unless you had a pass. So I had to park on a side street that was a little bit of a walk from where she stayed. And just leaving around 8 or 9 o'clock, even though I'm a guy and bigger and I'm not super afraid of people, but it's unsettling, especially whenever you're by yourself. So having self-defense knowledge and a skill set, it seems really valuable in a lot of ways.
Huge. I mean, and just being like situationally aware of your surroundings makes a big difference. I've learned things in like just training in jiu-jitsu that I never would have considered. But I mean, I really believe strongly, and again, my belief that like every single woman should have these tools in their toolbox. Unfortunately, it's just the world we live in. You never want to look back and be like, I wish I had known that. I wish I could have done something different. In my situation, I've actually had a negative traumatic experience when I was younger that really made me feel like I had no way out, right? Like, so I was actually sexually assaulted when I was 15 years old. And I realized later on that there were a lot of things leading up to that event that I probably could have done differently. Although you can't hold yourself, you feel guilty or feel shame if you're in a situation like that. But I just, as I got older, was like, I want to take responsibility for the potential outcome of whatever situation could happen, right? Because everything is so unpredictable. And you just don't know when you're going to be in a situation like that. And hopefully you never will be. But you don't also want to look back and be like, oh, I wish I had done something different, right? And that was part of like the drive for getting into jiu-jitsu as well, or just any self-defense.
Do you, is there anything like you can apply from your, I guess, physically from the like physical technique and things like that, maybe not so much, but just the principles of growth and self-defense and like the ranking system, how it works, that you can apply professionally?
I don't know. I would say principles wise, like not like technically, as of course there's technical things you can apply, but it's hard to like demonstrate. I can't demonstrate for you. But I would say what things that I've learned from being on the mat is not panicking, right? Like I've been able to learn how to slow my breathing down, how to be more in control of my reactions, and to be able to be more conscious about where my body is in comparison to where the other person's body is, how you can leverage certain moves against someone that's maybe bigger than you, being able to size up someone else to understand like what advantages they may have over you so you can combat that. But it's also just been really helpful in building humility, because everyone, when they come into jiu-jitsu, starts from the same place. And
Right.
so it's so uncomfortable to come in and you're wearing a gi, like those little like uniforms. And it's like, never wore this before. I'm not really digging it. It's not like a good fashion statement or anything. And then you start learning like what it's for and how we're training with it. And then there's also no gi training, which I've gotten into. You don't wear the gi. And I think that's a little bit more practical for like the street sense of like if you're being attacked, because not everyone's gonna be wearing a jacket, right? But I just think in terms of like rank, there's this big like not talked about phenomenon in jiu-jitsu where it's like you never ask like when you're going to move up. You never ask the coach like when because it's not about the belt. It's about how much you learn, right? It's about how much you can demonstrate, how much you can learn from others, how much you can teach others. And I love that concept that it's like it shouldn't be about what you're proving, it should be about what you're learning.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the important part is, I mean, who cares? Like, I mean, I guess it does matter what your rank is and what belt you have. But at the end of the day, if you feel fulfilled and you feel like you're smarter, stronger, more apt to protect yourself, I feel like that's just invaluable. That's everything.
Yeah, it builds your self-esteem for sure. Because if you're learning and you're applying what you've learned, that's the ticket, right? You every week improve, or every time that you're in there training, you improve. Like any time that you can do something that you couldn't do before, it builds your self-efficacy. Like you now have like a new, more instilled confidence in yourself. And like when you're going out in the world and you're dealing with hard stuff, which everyone's going to deal with hard stuff, that's what you need. You need that confidence to believe in yourself that you can do hard stuff. And this is just another way of like testing yourself and putting yourself in those situations where it's like building that for you.
Absolutely. So just to transition out a little bit, obviously I heard that you really enjoyed the Harry Potter series. I also watched Harry Potter for Christmas, which I still view them as Christmas movies, so it's kind of a cool thing. But I also know you're a big reader, so you have a love for books. You actually shared a book with me that I really enjoyed for a Christmas gift, so that was cool. So are you still into reading? Is that something that you try to do like in your free time?
Yes, I really am into reading. I love to do it. I would say that the older I've gotten and for lack of a better word, busier I've gotten, the way I read has changed. So I will actually just pick up a book and kind of just flip to a random page. And then whatever I learn, I try to take what I've learned from that page and put it into a practice, or maybe incorporate it into a journal entry that day, or maybe try to bring it up in a conversation to try to solidify. I am not a front end book reader like I used to be. Unfortunately, just haven't had the time to do it like that. But when I was obviously in grad school, I'm reading left and right, books. Right now I'm reading Jordan Peterson's book. He's a psychologist. I think it's 12 Rules of Life. And I don't know. I love psychology, but I haven't done anything really outside of that in a long time.
How do you feel about Jordan?
You know what? I really love exposing myself to things that are a little bit outside of that rattle you, right? Like you hear it and you're like, I really do enjoy, because that's where growth happens, right? If you only choose to expose yourself to things that are in alignment with your belief systems, then are you truly growing? Are you really exposing yourself and shifting your paradigms, right? Like, are you really doing that? No, probably not. So I enjoy reading things that are a little bit startling. Now there are some philosophies and ideologies that he holds that I'm a little like, might feel a little misogynistic at times, but I can appreciate it, right? And so there's things I can take from him, and I think more people would benefit if we had an open mind around others that are opposing beliefs, that hold opposing beliefs.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. He's when I heard that name immediately, I have so many thoughts because he's he's very old school, and he's kind of rigid in a lot of opinions where, once he puts it out there on video or in a book, like that's it. He doesn't really shake. And there's something to be learned from him, I think. I think there's some gems in there. I think that he, it's kind of a counterculture thing, right? Like he's definitely talking about topics that are extremely relevant, but he's hitting an extremely old school point of view on a lot of stuff. So he rattles people, and so like you said, there's some value in that, because you can't form an extremely strong argument about your own perspective unless you have a better understanding of the other side. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure there are a lot of really big Jordan Peterson apologists, for lack of a better word, too. So, for anybody listening, definitely not taking a shot at him. He's, like you said, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and it is good to understand all of the perspectives so that you can, really develop your own opinions too.
Yeah, it's so common for us to take on other people's opinions and not really form our own. We're always being influenced, whether it's social media or just, you're at the store and someone decides to pour out their belief systems on you. Like, it just happens, right? We're constantly being exposed to different things. It's like, how often do you step back, give yourself some space to really reflect on like what your values are, what are your belief systems, reevaluate, right? I think also it's really important that we, every now and then, whatever your own time frame is, it's every few years, or maybe there's not a time limit, you reevaluate your belief systems. Like, what thought or ideology or belief am I currently telling myself right now that's not helping me, that's not serving me, that is no longer something I believe in, right? Because our inner narrative, like our internal dialogue, is just reinforcing things that we've been exposed to, that have been told to us for so long, that it's almost like automatic. We don't really think about, like, wait a second, is that really what I believe? Or is that just what I was told to believe? And taking a step back and reevaluating that is really helpful, like to better understanding yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, especially in the South, but in every place, but especially in the South, it's really hard to shake a person's core belief. And I find that as people get older and they dig deeper and deeper roots into those beliefs, that person's got to change it themselves. Like, you're not really going to win somebody over if it's like a fundamental core belief planted as a child that they've dug in that deeply. At the same time, I do really like that perspective of, we can change it if we allow ourselves to reevaluate, if we absorb new information, if we read more books, if we listen to Jordan, every once in a while. I think there's a chance to kind of grow, and even if you don't change the belief, at least like challenge it, and at least take some time to wrestle with it, which I think is really like the root of personal growth.
Yeah. Can you sit in that other person's perspective and understand it? Not agree with it, but try to understand it, right? Can you see where they might be coming from? That is really powerful. If you have that skill, if you possess that skill, that lends yourself to connection, to belonging, to just so many other things. Even persuasion. When you look at the art of persuasion, like, if I can sit down with someone who has opposing beliefs from me and understand them, they're more likely to then open up and listen to my perspective, right? And then to maybe come and find some common ground between our perspectives. And gosh, no, we could use that everywhere. But yeah, I agree. I think that that's really important. And solitude, to be able to do that, right, is important as well.
Is there a particular behavior or belief or anything that, let's say, last 5 to 10 years that you, or maybe it was a core thing for you, an important thing that you changed because you opened yourself up?
Yeah, I mean, I was telling myself that rest was not productive for the longest time, that unless I was doing something that I believed was productive, rest was just not productive. Like sitting down, I mean, true rest, not just like, sitting down and just not working, not thinking, like meditation, going away for a weekend, not being on my computer, that's productive too. And when you pour into yourself, you're giving yourself an opportunity to pour out to others, right? You fill your cup first, whatever the expression is, put your mask on first in the airplane, right? Recharge your batteries. And so I think that was a belief system I had to shift in the last few years, was recognizing that I can be just as productive not doing anything for work as I can when I am doing work.
I think, I'm sure it's related, but for me, it's burnout. It's something that really wasn't problematic for me until the past couple of years. It's really strange because as a student, I was extremely obsessive with, getting 99, 100 on everything. I was extremely OCD about grades and test taking and, just being a completionist in every way, like as a gamer, as a collector, as, a son, in any way I could be. And then after college, I went on and joined the workforce and started working, and it was the same way. I think when I was working at the college before my current position, I was probably getting like close to 50 hours a week, maybe 55, 60 hours a week in some situations. And when you're like 19 years old, even though you're young, like that's pretty rough on the mind. But I never experienced burnout. Like it was never a problem. And then years back, same thing, just as a reader, as a gamer, just getting into more hobbies and interests, personal growth. Never felt tired, never wanted to stop. And then it just hits you. And then now it's like, uh-oh. I'm tired of looking at tech support things. I'm tired of looking at technology and screens. I'm tired of doing this, that, and the other. So having a few days off to do nothing is such a nice experience that would have never guessed I would want, but I definitely want now.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our limits, right? And when we're younger, we can put ourselves through all of it and say, oh, we don't need rest. We don't need, and maybe at that age we don't, but it definitely catches up with us. I think burnout, it tells us it's a good thing to pay attention to. It gives you information that you might need. It allows you to help understand, like, should I be making a different decision about what I'm doing? Should I reevaluate what I'm doing? Is what I'm doing still important to me, still meaningful to me? Do I feel like I'm contributing in a meaningful way? We can change as human beings. We are allowed to change our interests and our preferences. And historically, it's been known, especially in the workplace, for employees to sit with a company for years and years and years and years and years, right? And that was the thing to do, and do the same job in and out, even if you're not climbing, a corporate ladder. It doesn't, that's not how humans work. Our interests change, our personalities change over time, right? So if we need to pivot, we need to reevaluate what we're doing, and if it's still meaningful to us, I think we should be allowed to do that. It's totally acceptable, and reinvent ourselves every once in a while, even if it's not switching jobs or switching careers. Maybe it's how you're doing your job, you reinvent it. Getting a little bit more creative and innovative in what you do and how you do it.
What are you, whenever you need time alone, like solitude's an important factor, in life. Do you like to travel? Do you like to leave home? Do you like to stay in? Like, what do you do to kind of recharge?
Yeah, solitude for me has so many benefits, but it just depends on my mood. I definitely love to travel. A form of solitude for me was recently, like I went to Sardinia, and I was going there for a BJJ retreat just by myself, solo travel, and I didn't know anyone there, but I had a lot of days where I could just roam around the city on my own, talk to strangers, and a lot of time to just sit and think and sit and read, or sit and do nothing, or walk and do nothing, whatever, right? So that was something that I have done recently to like recharge my batteries. And it just gave me, like, anytime I travel, I have like a renewed perspective on life. I come back, I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got different energy. We're going to do this, and that. Love to travel, but I also just like hiking, or anything that allows me to quiet my mind. Being out in nature is huge. But I also like to have a practice of gratitude. That's part of, like, connected for me when it comes to like embracing solitude.
It's like Walden. Walden's like, being in nature, being isolated, just kind of focusing on the self and the mind and breathing techniques. And I did a project on that, and I think it was American Lit. I'm pretty sure that's the class I did that one, but everyone was really mad because not that much interesting happens in the book because he's just kind of relaxing and experiencing solitude. But now looking back, if I did a project on it, I'd be like, no, you need to understand and listen. This is important.
Yeah, like quiet the mind and like actually just be. Like, I don't know the way to say it, but I think some people, and including myself, for a long time, I struggled being comfortable being alone, right? Like not, and I would definitely say that, solitude is not synonymous with loneliness. So a lot of people think, or some people might think like, oh, if I embrace solitude, that means like I have to be alone. That's loneliness. No, it's a tool you can use to deepen your connection with yourself. And then when you do that, you're able to connect easier and better with people around you because you're just more clear on what your desires, your beliefs, your passion, your purpose, things like that. But it just helps with directions in life and thinking and evaluating like where you want to go, or just recharging, renewing.
What do you consider yourself to be? Like extroverted, introvert, just straight introvert? What is your classification there?
Ambivert.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm in the middle. Yeah. And I'm using a tool to determine that, but I would also agree with that as well. Like there's only so much time I can spend in like large groups of people or large events with a lot of people before I need to like go and recharge and just be by myself. And then there's also like so much time I can like sit around in my place and be like, I need to get out and do something. So it just depends. But I think having a balanced approach, whatever that looks like for you, is something that you have to figure out for yourself, right? And I think I've gotten it down. But every once in a while or every few months, it'll probably shift, right? It'll probably be like, oh, not enough recharge time, enough solitude time. And then you just make adjustments and you compensate.
Yeah, I would call myself an introvert with the potential to be extroverted. I think, it would be wrong of me to say I'm an extroverted introvert because I'm really not. I try to avoid it if possible, try to avoid groups and social interactions and people. But I have the ability and the experience and the knowledge to present as an extrovert when needed. That's kind of my official classification. And I think too, because my Enneagram is a 1-wing too, so there's definitely a lot of like support, help / personable quality that's built into that. And I'm not going to argue with the test. I mean, it was like 120 questions. So, but at the same time,
what test was this?
The Enneagram test. I don't know who made it, but I paid for it, so it must be official.
Oh,
I have to
no.
take the answers.
Oh no, I'd be asking for a report.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting, but I don't know that I have the ability, I don't know that I have the ability to stay in a social setting surrounded by people for an extended period of time. I think ultimately I would just get super angry and want to like shell up and go away from everyone.
Yeah. You know yourself, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to save just a little bit of time here at the end before we conclude to talk about podcasting, because you're my only guest thus far who has a podcast. So it's always a cool thing to kind of go into. So, and it's also a good time to just kind of plug and make sure everyone knows how to find you and where to go listen to your podcast. So what inspired you to start, and, what is your ultimate goal, your end goal for it?
Yeah. So like I said, I want to kind of shine a light on those in my field that are in the discipline, plugging away in organizations, trying to make it a better place for all employees involved. But if we can share the science, like all this good science with people that they can put into use and apply, even better, right? Like I would love to be able to surface the science and have people benefit from that. That's kind of like what inspired me. And then what was your other question? Sorry.
Yeah. What is your end goal? So what would it look like, or what would make you feel like you've accomplished what you wanted to?
Yeah, people are using it. So it's funny. I just launched this past Tuesday. So it's been a very exciting and crazy busy week for me. We launched with 3 episodes, and all 3 of them, I'm so biased, but all 3 of them were just incredible, awesome guests. And they were just amazing at like sharing the science and their insights and perspectives. And I already had like received some messages from an individual that said like, I just listened to episode number 3 and she talked about this technique called de-blur. And now I feel like I understand what's been going wrong with my communication with all these individuals in my life is I'm not de-blurring my words. And then, oh, I didn't realize like you have different energy levels at different times of the day, and that maybe I should orient my day around those energy levels. And like, she was just like telling me about all these ways she's going to use it. And that to me is so rewarding. It's like, if I can just help one person, even if it's for a day, I don't care. Like, it's just so exciting to hear how people might use this science. Because that's what it is. Right. But that's kind of like my end goal is to get it big enough where, and then I'd love to be able to like host, Brene Brown, Adam Grant one day and like have conversations with them, sit with them around a campfire, like nerd out around like psychology, social psychology, neuroscience. I've just all that good stuff. Maybe I am a Ravenclaw.
I think it's looking more and more like that. I don't know
That's
that you
true.
can hide from it now, but
Yeah.
if you do the Pottermore test, you could also find out your Patronus. So that would be cool to do.
I'm incentivized right now. I'm incentivized. So yeah.
But yeah, who's your dream guest? Like whenever, so in my mind, this is kind of my idea for my podcast. I either want to do like 50 episodes and just abruptly stop and never do another one, or do like 100 episodes and abruptly stop. But if I ever were able, there's a content creator named Shady Penguin, and I've been a massive fan since I was like 13 years old. Been a part of my life for a very long time. But if I ever was able to host Shady, I would just quit because I would feel like I made it.
You feel like you made it? Oh my goodness. That's such a hard question. I mean, the 2 that I mentioned are incredible, like Brene Brown, dream. Adam Grant would be a dream. But I think Martin Seligman, he is like the founding father of positive psychology, and his work, his research has like changed my life. So I probably would want to talk. I think I even emailed him one time when I was in grad school, like hoping for a response, like, hey, I'm doing a thesis and I'm using your work and I created an intervention and I just hope one day you'll hear from me. So probably him, because he's really cool. I love talking to people that are trying to improve the world and just deep dive into topics like that.
Yeah,
or Elon Musk, because he's just like, let's go to space. I love that.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd rather have listened to you talk to Jordan or Elon. That would be pretty wild. Elon was good though, because Elon's got so many crazy ideas that don't make sense, but somehow he always makes it work.
Yeah, he can help us make sense of it because he's on another planet with his brain. I love it.
Although everyone's kind of mad at him right now because of Twitter. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like if I hosted Shady and had a conversation with Shady, I would just stop. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that are extremely brilliant minds that have so much experience and life story to share. And that's kind of the point is, everyone has a unique life story. So if it's out there and you can consume it and you can learn from it, why not? So that's kind of the idea. And so there's no like set conversation. There's no set theme that I need to have. Like it's always just about you and what your experience has been. So it's kind of nice that I left the door that open for myself because I can't really run out unless everyone's gone. So
yeah, I agree. I really like the concept of your podcast. I like that you're letting people share their stories. I think I talked to you before we hit record that I've never been on this side of it. In terms of like talking personal stuff, I usually am talking professional topics, right? So it's just a really interesting concept.
Yeah, I've already had 2 guests tell me that whenever it's time for me to describe my world, that they want to be the host, and so I'm kind of kind of in a bad spot because now I have two people vying for that responsibility. So we'll see if that ever happens, like who I will, appoint the responsibility. And that'll be a
Yeah.
fun time, I'm sure.
Yeah. If you're asking others to do it, you have to be willing to do it yourself, right?
Yeah. I will say though, you were mentioning, reaching out to someone and trying, I guess it was, you don't really expect a response, but I was like that too. My very first guest actually has 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. She's a content creator, very popular creator in her sphere. He sent her an email to her business email and she responded like that day. She was totally down to do it. Like just for someone with no subscribers, no podcast established. So you never know, just reach out and shoot your shot. You might get somebody.
Yeah. I'm down for it. I will definitely do that. Just got to get into it's the first week, so I'm trying to. Well, I think I don't know if I shared with you. I've been working behind the scenes probably for 4 to 5 months. Like before I even committed to a podcast, I said, "All right, let me just see if I can come up with a list of 3 months of topics, and if I can come up with 3 months, then I'll commit to it because I want to have at least 3 months of content prepared in advance before I launch anything."
Right.
So I came up with the 3 months of content, like different topics, just episode ideas. And then I kept going and I kept going and I got to a year and I was like, oh, I got to launch. I got to do this. So then I started putting together branding and then I got excited and I was like reaching out to people. Then I got an editor. I started recording and I was like, wow. So we have 3 months of content. We launched Tuesday and the 3 episodes have been getting so much support that we launched with. And I'm just so ecstatic and so excited to hear everyone's feedback. And I love sharing these people's insights. They're just experts and just thought leaders in the space. And it's so important to share knowledge. For me, I think it's important, but I hope that others will benefit from it.
I actually totally stole from you already. So one of your posts, it might have been, I'm confident it was LinkedIn because I know exactly what I stole from you, but there was like an animated image of you. It looked like a drawing almost, and it was part of the post. So I was like, I have to do that. So I went and I don't know if it was Canva or what I used, but I created something very similar and I used it for my banner on YouTube.
Ooh.
And I really like it. It's a really great idea, but it was your idea first. So
I can't give credit for that. So I recently added a social media manager to my team, and she does creative marketing design. Her husband does graphics, and so he came up with it. And so the first time I saw it, I was like, genius. That's so cool. It's so different. So I can't take credit for it, but you take it. You do it. I can't wait to see it. I'm excited. That's awesome.
So before we wrap, there's one activity that I do with all my guests, and if you listen to any of the episodes, you're already aware of what's coming toward you. I need to get some stuff off my screen so I can find it. So there's a series of 10 questions, and it's based on a show from the 90s called Inside the Actor Studio. I have adapted the 10 questions for content just because there were a couple of them that were a little dicey, so I wanted to make them a little more acceptable. But they could be one word, one phrase, one sentence, whatever you like. And I'm extremely curious how you'll answer these.
Me too. We're in the same boat.
Down?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. And then after that, I'm going to give you space to, plug, shout yourself out, and then we'll be good to go. So first question, what is your favorite word?
Curiosity.
Okay.
We were just right away. Is this like Freudian slip, free association type of work we're doing here? Okay.
Well, the nice thing is we have the ability to cut. So if we do something bad, we could always fix it later.
Good.
But feel free to take a few seconds. It doesn't have to be off the top of your head. What is your least favorite word?
Oh, can't.
Okay, that suits you. That would be perfect. What excites you?
Knowledge, learning, information. It sounds like a broken record, but that's it.
What upsets you?
Fighting.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Negative banter and just conflict, and it's not that I would avoid it. I just don't like hearing it. Like can we all just get along?
Are you not good with conflict resolution, or are you too good with conflict resolution?
No, I'm the type of individual that will confront a situation, but it's not like a preference, right? Like it's not it's not, I don't think it's comfortable for anybody, right? But just like going back to like the childhood stuff, right? Like growing up with parents that are constantly bickering back and forth and going through the divorce, it's like it's triggering when you hear people like fighting back and forth and arguing. It's like, let's just have a conversation about this. Let's just talk through this. Yeah.
Absolutely. What sound or noise do you love?
Ocean waves.
Okay, I don't think anyone said that yet, which is kind of odd because it is it makes sense to me. What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, um, what's that like sound like chalkboard?
Like
The
nails
chalk
on a
on, yeah,
chalkboard?
that. Just
It
thinking about it's
almost.
already making, yeah.
I was gonna say when I think about the sound, I almost feel it. It's almost
Yeah.
like it's like something I remember.
Yeah. Next
Um,
question.
what motivates you to act every day when you wake up?
What motivates me? The concept that like today's just such a different, that's a new day, right? Like there's so much that could happen that is so exciting. It's like waking up on Christmas morning, you could just like make it whatever you want to make it that day.
I envy you so much. I wish that every morning were Christmas morning for me.
If you reframe, like it, obviously not everyone wakes up thinking that, but if you reframe, you catch yourself thinking that, you're like, I can make today whatever I want to make. Recite affirmations, like eventually get into a place where you're like, wow, this is like really exciting. Today can be anything I want it to be. Like, I can do anything I want to do today. And if you start really thinking like that, it's really cool.
My wife's initial answer to that question was spite, and then she reframed and she said it's actually potential. So she was able to capture that feeling.
Potential.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, if the CIA or the FBI is watching this, just saying, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I had a cousin who wanted to be in criminal profiler, and I think she ended up in like the top three among the options that they picked, and they picked someone else, but pretty far in the process. Pretty
So fascinating.
awesome. What profession would you not like to do?
Jeez, Travis, these questions. You didn't send these in advance? No.
No, you weren't prepared. No one's prepared.
Which? Probably being a judge. I don't know. Like that's just
You wouldn't want to, send people to jail.
no. Or like maybe like I'm giving you a second answer. Like a garbage truck.
Oh my goodness.
Like smelling the garbage all the whole day. Probably not
I have
that
to
either.
take 2 showers when you get home just to make sure.
I mean, thank goodness for people who want to do that work, but I do not want to do that work.
And last question and hardest question, my personal favorite. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You've made it, or you're allowed in. Probably one of those phrases.
Yeah, you would hope, right? That's the first thing you hear, not the last thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that's also followed by the door opening and letting you in.
Yeah, you'd be like racing in. You're like, you can't take it back now. I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that I've done enough good to get there. You always hope that. I know for sure I've not done enough bad to not get there. That's for sure.
All right, well, that's it. You survived all 10 questions. Good job.
They weren't great answers, but I'm happy to play. Thank you for letting me play that game.
I mean, it's fun because you're not prepared, so they're honest, right?
I do something similar in my episodes as well. I ask in line with the concept of paradigm shifts. I say, what is the most recent paradigm shift that you've experienced? So Travis, let me ask you that. What is the most recent paradigm shift that you've encountered?
That's a good question. I think it would either be just the experience of having weekly conversations with people like this that's totally out of my comfort zone. And normally I would not talk to anybody outside of just cordial, friendly work banter. Or it would be just my career shift going from tech support to GIS. That's a pretty big one too, because even though we're under the IT umbrella, they're totally different. So both of those would be pretty recent.
I'm excited for you. Congratulations on that shift.
Yeah, thanks. I was talking to one of our coworkers earlier, and I was saying I miss the help desk part of it because we're wing too, but I also don't miss the help desk part of it. Like I don't have 15 people a day to call anymore. Now I just kind of get my thing, I create my stuff, and we're all set.
You're all set. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and spending some time in conversation. It's been a lot of fun. Again, for anyone listening / watching, please click on the button. It should be somewhere on the screen where you can go and check out the channel for Paradigm Shifts Podcast. And I'm going to give you the final word. So whatever you feel like saying, if you want to shout yourself out, feel free, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah. So thank you so much. If you are going to subscribe, follow, listen, you can follow the Instagram is at Paradigm Shifts Podcast. The YouTube is at Paradigm Shifts Podcast. I think we have a TikTok out there. And LinkedIn, you can follow me, Kayshia Kruger. And I think, Travis, you'll probably put my name in this, so they can just look for me that way. And if you want to connect, you have ideas, you want to be on my podcast, let me know. But feedback is important to me. So if anyone has feedback, positive or constructive, I am happy to listen to it. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'll put all of the links in the description as well for both the audio and the video. And that way, if you all want to go and find Kayshia quickly, you'll have an easy opportunity to do so. That was fun. That was a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.